Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toys and Ford. Dan here with you as always, and we've got a loaded episode of this podcast. RJ Cardinal is going to join me at the back end. We're going to talk some Badgers with him, Badger football. I have a couple more quarterbacks, new quarterbacks through the transfer portal. We're going to talk a little bit about the transfer portal and more Badger stuff with him. Want to talk a little bit about the NBA Cup with the Bucks getting set to take on the Thunder for the championship tonight. But I want to lead off with this podcast. I want to talk a little bit more about the Packers defense and kind of are we being a little too harsh? Let me explain here. So first off, Packers, just how good was their pass rush against Seattle? Here's a couple numbers, and these are courtesy from Matt Schneidman from The Athletic, who covers the green and gold and such, and you can read his entire piece over there. But just some of the numbers. According to True Media, the Packers finished the game with a pressure percentage of 45.2%, meaning they pressured the Seahawks quarterback on almost half of their dropbacks. For reference, the highest team pressure rate in the NFL this season is 41.7%. The Browns are the only team over 40%. Green Bay posted a sack rate of 17.5% against the Seahawks. The highest team sack rate this season belongs to the Giants at 9.4%. Entering this previous week, the Packers ranked 21st in pressure percentage, 15th in sack percentage, and 27th in blitz rate. When they didn't blitz in their first 13 games, the Packers had a pressure percentage of 29.1% and a sack rate of 7.3%. A lot of percents and numbers over there. Point of the thing is that, okay, yeah, Green Bay did a really good job at pressuring and getting after the quarterback against Seattle. But the number that kind of surprised me a little bit when it came to Green Bay's got the seventh most sacks in the entire National Football League. Seventh most. They actually entered the games last night with the sixth most, but Minnesota moved up. That surprised me when I heard that Green Bay was just outside top 5 in the league for sacks. Number 1 is Denver at 49. Houston's number 2 at 45. Baltimore, 44. Dallas, 42. Minnesota, 42. The Giants, 41. Green Bay, 40. Seventh most sacks in the entire National Football League. I'll be honest, that surprised me there a little bit. Not going to lie. That surprised me a little bit. Like, for all the talk this offseason, and I know it's just one number, okay? And I know sacks have come in bunches and such, and I know it's just one number out there. But you'd be lying to yourself if you're like, okay, I didn't think Green Bay would be just outside the top 5 in total amount of sacks this year. Be real. It caught me off guard. They got more sacks than Pittsburgh. And when you think of Sack City, you think of TJ Watt over there, right? You think of those teams. They got more sacks than San Francisco. They've got more sacks than Tampa Bay. They've got more sacks than Philadelphia. They've got more sacks than the Bears. They've got more sacks than Cleveland. They got more sacks than Kansas City, than the Buffalo Bills. More than Detroit. A lot of that is because of Aiden Hutchinson and that Detroit defense just being decimated by injuries over there. They got more than a lot of those teams out there. So I got to admit, it surprised me, and I think it would surprise a lot of people. I know I was telling a few people about it yesterday, like, no, that's not true. Yeah, it is. At that point, it was 6. But Minnesota able to move up there a little bit. And when you look at that game against Seattle, we talked a lot about, obviously, Edrin Cooper was the main dude when we were talking about the game against Seattle and such. And for what it's worth, if you are a Pro Football Focus believer in terms of grades, Edrin Cooper graded out as the highest player for the Packers overall, highest defender, but highest player overall, 93.8, which is, according to Pro Football Focus, an elite grade. Carrington Valentine, 90.2. TJ Slayton, 83.1. Kenny Clark, 4th highest. Eric Stokes, 5th highest. So in a game, too, where there was no Jair and maybe a little bit concerned about the secondary and the corners, 2 of your top 5 were cornerbacks. Offensively, just in case anybody's wondering, Zach Tom had the highest grade, Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks, Josh Myers, and Jaden Reed. But back to the pressure thing and back to getting after the quarterback. So, we were talking about, obviously, Edgerrin Cooper got a lot of love, and rightfully so, and these other guys. You want to know who the guy who had the most pressures, though, against Seattle? The guy with the most pressures? Carl Brooks. You didn't really hear his name a whole lot in that game, but the man had 6 pressures against Seattle. 6. Devontae Wyatt had 5. Kenny Clark had 5. Edgerrin Cooper had 3. Enoch Barre, 3. Brenton Cox, 3. Lucas Van Ness, 2. Rashawn Gary, 2. That's that. Because again, we heard his name a couple times, but I mean, when we talked about defensive pressures and defensive players and those guys having a game and such, Carl Brooks was the dude that led the team in pressures in that game. So it's not dominated. When we look at this front, there's not one guy that is just absolutely dominating the thing up there like some teams have. When you think about certain defenses and you think about maybe players who are just racking up the sacks or whatever have you. You think of like a pass rusher, you think of one defensive end or an edge rusher and such. It's not the case when it comes to Green Bay, at least so far this season. You've seen different dudes, different guys kind of step up and be a part of that. It's almost reminding me a little bit of not to a full extent, but kind of sort of a little bit like the receiving core, where maybe it's like one week it's that guy, the next week it might be that guy, and that sort of thing. It's kind of like that a little bit here with the defensive front. It sure seems like. I don't know, but it seems like every week or so, and I know that's a blanket statement and just a very generalized statement, but every so often it seems like another that defensive dude had that week. So a couple of those, I don't know if anybody else saw that, but a couple of those numbers that I noticed yesterday with this Packers defense. One, top 10 team in sacks, just outside the top 5, and they're not that far off. And Carl Brooks had himself a game yesterday too. We gotta acknowledge that. We got to acknowledge that. And I know sometimes we kind of and I'm one of them too. But I think, once I saw some of that stuff pop up, I'm like, dude, are we overlooking, or are we being too hard on what we have seen so far from the defensive front? It's not been perfect. It's not been absolutely dominant. I don't think we can say that, on a week-in basis. Has it been absolutely dominant? No. Has it shown glimpses of being dominant this season? Yes. I think the biggest concern, though, when it comes to the pass rush, and I think it's fair to say, has been maybe the consistency. The consistency of the pass rush. You go up against Seattle, which has a putrid offensive line, and it was already banged up to begin with, and you rack up some incredible pass rushing numbers. Good. At least you didn't, allow Seattle's backups and inferior offensive line to dominate you. On one hand, it's like, okay, you didn't play down to the competition. That a boy. All right. But then, you see some other games, you're like, okay, what the heck happened over there? Now, you still got to give credit to certain, the Lions, for instance. Lions have one of the best offensive lines in the entire National Football League. It's hard to get after the quarterback and such when you're going up against one of the better offensive lines. Not to excuse everything, But you also, I think, have to kind of look at the fronts and the matchups and that sort of stuff. But there's definitely been the pass rush to me is one of the most, how do I want to phrase this? One of the most curious aspects of this defense, because we've seen so many different styles. I mean, again, I'll go back to the first couple weeks of the season where we it was like a contain rush. You don't want the mobile quarterbacks to be running around and doing this and et cetera, et cetera. You didn't want those guys, so you kind of had a contain rush. And then, you got your pocket passers. You go up against Tennessee. At that point, it was Will Levis, and dude was struggling. You just kind of tee off against him. Houston, they were able to get after C.J. Stroud. That was another game where that pass rush was on and such. So the pass rush to me is not just so cut and dry when it's come to the Packers this year. Has it been like eye-popping and just like, okay, that group is so dominant. It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe the 17 Eagles where, that group was just up there and they were rotating a bunch of guys, and it was just like, well, dude, those are good. Or even Tampa Bay a couple of years after that when they won the Super Bowl. I mean, they had a pretty dominant defensive front as well. This group, though, for Green Bay has been, I don't think it's been as bad as a lot of us, and again, I'm guilty of this. I don't think it's been as bad as we've kind of painted it out to be throughout the season. Has it been inconsistent at points? Absolutely, it's been inconsistent at points. But maybe it hasn't been just as putrid as sometimes as we like to kind of make it out, because there has been games where you're looking at like, what the heck? Where was that pass rush? Where were those guys? Maybe the Chicago game, for example. And yes, there's been a couple games where it's like, I'm sure there's going to be some people that says, well, those numbers are based off just a couple games. Yeah, you're right. There were a couple games where they loaded up the numbers in the sack department. No question about it. That numbers don't lie at that point. But I also feel like, and maybe it's just because they're starting to get a little bit better and the percentages are getting up there and the pass rush is starting to improve in that. I feel like maybe the pass rush, were we a little bit too hard on it, because were we willing to give them a little bit of a leeway switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3? You're asking guys in this system who, for some of them, have been doing it for the last few years, relearning it and different technique and that sort of stuff. Were we a little bit too hard on it at the beginning there, and now maybe it's just kind of all starting to figure itself out and come together and such, or were we just not maybe as patient enough? And now maybe it's kind of all starting to click and come together and playing a little complementary defensive football up there. Maybe, I don't know. We only got 3 more games here, but I don't think there's any question in denying that what we see from our eyes, we don't need numbers and we don't need statistics and we don't need percentages and these fancy analytic numbers to tell us. We can see it with our own eyes, but we can see that, okay, there's been some improvement, right? There's been some improvement. And to me, if you get to that postseason, and you're looking at the current teams in the NFC right now, especially, maybe like a Jared Goff or such, better make sure your pressure, your pass rush is going to be consistent in those games. But I just feel like, too, what Jeff Hafley has done as a defensive coordinator, and this is just me from the outside, kind of looking in and just observing. But I think one thing that he has done a really good job at this year is game planning to specific teams. It just felt like at times over the years when it comes to a Green Bay defense, it was like, okay, we're doing this. And I don't know if it was just a little ego or hard-headedness, but we're going to do it this and we're going to do it this way. This is our identity. This is what we're going to do on defense. And it just feels like, I don't know, I'm probably completely off my rocker, but it just feels like that this year we're seeing the defense schemed up a little bit more for their particular opponent. Instead of just this blanket, this is what we do, and this is what we're going to do week in and week out. I know that's probably generalizing it a lot, but that's just, for me, that's one thing I've noticed, in my opinion at least, from Hafley, is that it just, there seems to be a bit more of a game plan week in and week out with this defense. Whether it's a contained pass rush, whether it's 1 week they're going to be blitzing a little bit more, whether it's, different types of coverage and such, and I know he's got to adjust to who's available and this, that, and the other thing and that. But I feel like that's one of the differences we're seeing from this defense overall this year. And, I know we got 3 more games left to go here, but Packers fans, have you been impressed with Jeff Hafley so far this year? And I think, do you have to give it a little bit of a leeway because he's coming in and trying to install a brand new system? And let's face it, those players aren't in the building as much anymore, and those coaches don't have as much availability with their players as they used to back in the good old days, right? That's not a fault on the coaches. I guarantee you a lot of those coaches would love those players and able to do a lot more with their players in the offseason than what they are right now. I don't fault the coaches for that. Coaches are trying to do their best and trying to install a lot of crap and try to teach a lot of stuff in a very limited amount of time. I don't fault the coaches for that, because I really believe that if the more hands-on stuff that they can do, they would jump at that opportunity. So I do give that a little bit of leeway. Maybe at certain points I was a little hard on it and such. But in reflection, when you look back at it, it's like, how much time did they actually get to work on installing and doing that? And then, you kind of get into the season and such. I've been impressed with Jeff Hafley. I've been impressed. I think all things considered, and especially when you're playing, some key players this year have been rookies, like an Evan Williams, or in this case an Edrin Cooper, and Javon Bullard's been asked to do a lot of different stuff, going back and forth between a safety and a nickel and that. You're moving Keyshawn over to an outside. I've been impressed with Jeff Hafley. What's been your impression so far of him? I've liked it. I hope he's back for next year. I hope nobody tries to steal him away as a head coach. I don't think anybody is, but you never know. There could always be those surprise hirings, right? Don't think he's going back to the college game by any time soon here, so don't think we have to worry about that. But overall, I've been impressed. And I think it's just going to continue to get better. The more comfortable everybody gets within, everybody's going to get more the defense is going to get more comfortable within this. The more reps they get, the more in-game reps they get. And I think you're starting to see that here a little bit too, because we have seen a better play from Kenny Clark as of late. These guys that we questioned at the beginning of the year, we've seen better play from these guys. And maybe they're finally getting to that point instead of trying to think, okay, I got to do this. We talk about it a lot. Just play, don't think. But you're playing in a brand new system. And for Kenny Clark, for how many years in one style and one system, you're probably thinking a lot. Okay, what do I? Maybe it's to the point now where it's like it's just secondhand knowledge. It's just go out there and do it without thinking. It's that simple now, more comfortable. I don't know. I just looking at all this. Were we a little too hard? Were we a little too hard in the beginning of the season when it's come to the defensive side? Something to think about. All right, let's take a quick break, and I want to talk a little bit about the NBA Cup coming up next. Family owned and operated, Toyson Ford is proud to serve the drivers of the Chippewa Valley with some of the most popular vehicles around Wisconsin and the country. They're committed to giving drivers from across the area the best in customer service with a top-notch selection of brand new vehicles to choose from, as well as an extensive inventory of pre-owned crossover, SUV, and trucks. Plus, with their expert finance, service, and parts centers in-house, they strive to be your one-stop dealership for all of your automotive needs. Visit them today at 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls. Bucks have a chance to raise another banner. You know they're going to raise a banner. I know some people were like, are they going to raise a banner? They're going to raise a banner. If they win this thing, they are going to raise a banner. Lakers did it last year. If there's one team that's got enough space up there, Lakers are one of them, Celtics are up there too. You know the Bucks are going to raise a banner if they win it tonight. It's going to happen. Maybe probably be a different color banner like the Lakers did, but they're going to raise it. So I know there's been some people out there, oh, are they going to do that? They better not do it and all. They're going to. They're going to. But this is a good test here for this Bucks team because the Bucks right now they're playing with some momentum. They're playing their best basketball in the early part of the season right now. It seems like this is a team that is finally starting to get it. Finally learning to, play basketball together, understanding each other. Doc Rivers maybe has a better understanding of his team, and he's got that rotation figured out and such. This team is finally kind of playing at that level that I think quite a few of us thought they would be at the beginning of the season. So they're playing with some momentum. They're playing with some momentum, but this Thunder team is another team that's got championship aspirations too. And they're off to a fantastic start this season, 20-5 overall. Before the season started, they were a very popular pick, a hot pick to be the NBA champions after this year. So it's a good test for this Bucks team that's playing their best basketball right now, going up against a very, very, very good team. And it's led by MVP candidate Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who so far this year is averaging 30.3 points per game, third most in the league, 6.3 assists, and he's shooting 51% overall from the field. I'm assuming it'll be him and Dame kind of matched up with each other. Maybe Doc's got some different assignments, defensive assignments and such going up against him. But Shai Gilgeous has been playing some solid hoops as of late here too. Last 4 games he's scored at least 30 points or more. And this is a game between two potential MVP candidates with Giannis. I still have my doubts whether they would give Giannis another MVP award because I do believe that there is some MVP fatigue in the NBA unless there's a player that's like, okay, we literally can't not give it to this guy because he's been so good. But Shai Gilgeous, I think, is in the running for that MVP. I would throw Giannis in there. I think to penalize somebody because they're having a good year just because they've won it a couple times is ridiculous and stupid. But Giannis right now, 32.7 points per game, 11.5 rebounds per game, leading the league in scoring, 5th in the league in rebounds, 22nd in the league in assists too, 6.1 assists. And he's 5th in the league in field goal percentage, 61.4%. And he has also been on an incredible tear as of late, playing some amazingly good basketball. Bucks are not favored in this game. It's a 5.5-point favorite for the Thunder. That shouldn't surprise anybody. That shouldn't upset anybody. But can the Bucks win this game? Yeah, absolutely. I think they can win this game. I think they're going to have to play some solid defense. They're going to have to play some really good defense against this Thunder team. It's going to be, I think, an uphill climb. But no doubt, I think the Bucks could pull off the upset and win this game. I'll make my official pick when we get to picks and predicts come up here in just a little bit. But you look at the matchups with this game here too. And for a lot of people too, who are maybe just casual fans of the NBA, you probably don't recognize or probably don't know a whole lot of people on this Thunder team other than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Right? You probably know Chet Holmgren. Probably know him maybe just because, college and that, but he's out. I mean, he's injured right now. He's been dealing. The last time he played was it's been a little bit here, and I know there was some talk about him maybe potentially playing in the NBA Cup final, but he's recovering from a hip fracture, and he's expected. The latest I saw was just the other day, expected to be sidelined for at least another month over there. But you look at the rest of this roster when it comes to the Thunder. You got Cason Wallace, okay, 6.9 points per game. You've got Dort, 10.2 points per game. Names you probably don't recognize. Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams, though, kind of stepping in and filling that scoring void. 21.7 points per game so far this season. It's number 8 in your programs. Jalen Williams over there. And then you kind of look at the bench. Alex Caruso's over there. You probably remember him a little bit from his Bulls days, coming off the bench there. But this team is led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And if he's going to have an off night, as rare as they come, but if he does have an off night tonight, Bucks better take advantage of that. They better take advantage of that. This has the makings of potentially being I think, kind of a high-scoring game. When we look at both of these teams, just kind of where they rank in terms of the rest of the NBA here. You've got OKC that's averaging 115.6 points per game. The Bucks, about middle of the pack. Not too far off, but 113.3 points per game. Defensively, though, this is where it's going to maybe potentially be a good test for the Bucks. The number 1 team in points allowed is going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Technically tied with the Magic here at 103.5. But OKC only giving up 103.5 points per game. Milwaukee is 12th in the league, 111.9. So that the weird thing is when it comes to the NBA, I still feel like this potentially could be a game that's maybe a little bit higher scoring than these averages show. I don't know. I have this weird feeling that it could be up there. Maybe it's a little bit of a defensive battle, but I think part of it is just we know Dame's not the greatest defensive guard in the league. For his I know he kind of tried to tamp down that narrative a couple weeks ago and such. But if he is going to be matched up with Alexander, those two might just have a shoot-off between the two of them. And what's going to be the Thunder's game plan going up against the Greek Freak? And with how well he is playing, that is going to be a key matchup or a key to victory here. Especially with Giannis's development of his mid-range and that mid-range jumper. But it's a good test for this Bucks team going up against, right now, what the numbers tell you, what the stats tell you, the best defensive team in the league in terms of points allowed. And point differential, number 1 team in the league, Oklahoma City. Plus 12. 12.1 to be exact. I'm excited. The NBA Cup, it's one of those that, I'll be honest, I don't get excited for it when it first starts. You got your pool play games, certain ones on the schedule that you see them change out the court, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a okay NBA Cup game. Who cares? And then you find out it's like, oh okay, so they advanced. Okay, cool. And it's only 2 years into this thing. Then you get to then you get to the semis, and it's like, okay, they got it. Like you're maybe paying a little bit more attention. For me, I'm like, okay, I'm paying a little bit more attention to it. I still watch Bucks games, but I just don't like. I'm at that point where it's like I'm not more amped up for the game. I'm not more amped up to watch it. I still watch Bucks games. I still listen to Bucks games and follow Bucks games. The NBA Cup for me personally hasn't, for the games leading up to it, hasn't gotten me more, or hasn't made me more of a basketball fan or as a Bucks fan. It hasn't done that. But now that they've got to the finals, I'm like, okay, here now it's maybe a little bit more of appointment viewing. Like, okay, now I'm into it. I'm kind of like, okay, let's go here. I want to win this thing. You know, the competitive juices are flowing here a little bit. And the thing is, with the NBA Cup, to me, it wasn't necessarily for fans when it was developed. It wasn't for fans. Maybe a little bit of it was, but let's be real. A lot of it was to get these players playing more games and to get these players to have meaningful games at the beginning, middle part of the season. Because the biggest issue that there is in the NBA is load management, and these superstars taking nights off, taking their days off. And it annoys fans. It upsets fans. It upsets TV networks when they're going to have a nationally televised game, prime time, and it's going to be a load management day for fill in the blank. So what the NBA Cup is doing is like, okay, you're incentivizing these players. Hey, we're going to give you more money. You win this thing, you're going to get more money. And the players haven't been, some players haven't been, shy, or not shy, but I mean, they're telling the truth. A lot of them are doing it or really into it because it's a bonus. It's an extra. It's a little bit of an extra payday. They're not hiding that fact, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't hide the fact that, hey, they're kind of into this here a little bit more because of the money. Especially for some of these guys that don't make a ton. I know Giannis had said, he's not paying attention to the money. Giannis is making almost $50 million a year in just salary. Okay? Giannis probably doesn't necessarily have to pay more attention to the money part of it. Okay? But there's other guys, like an AJ Green, for one example, who's not making the most money in the world. He's going to get a nice payday if the Bucks win this thing, though. Right? He's going to get a little payday. And I think for maybe the main stars here, too, it's like it provides a little bit more of a competitive atmosphere. You want to play in these games where it kind of means a little bit. It kind of gets your juices flowing a little bit. And I think that's the biggest thing what this NBA Cup has done for the superstars. Giannis may not care about a few extra million or a couple extra $1 million, but it's provided a little bit more of a competitive atmosphere, and it's provided a little bit of obviously a prize at the end, because you get a trophy and you get to hang up a banner and such. So that's what the NBA Cup has done, is it's gotten these guys to, maybe play a few more games than what they would in the past, factoring in your load management, and it's provided some competitive games in the early part of the season. Because I think if you ask a lot of NBA fans or you ask a lot of casual basketball fans, when do you start paying attention to the NBA? Or when you start following the NBA, you're going to get some version of this answer around Christmas, or after football season. Somewhere in that time frame. Like, when you thought of Christmas Day, for the longest time, it was those are the prime NBA games. Like, if you got a game on Christmas Day, that was the NBA day. NFL's taking that now. NFL don't care. So the NBA has had to come up with ways to maybe get a little bit more attention from the fans, but also to keep their players into it to be in the air and trying to generate some of those competitive games. And I think it's where, for the most part, like the diehard fans, you listen to diehard NBA fans. I was listening to this the other day. I can't remember who it was, but they love the NBA Cup. They're into it. Casual fans or a fan like me who I wouldn't consider myself a diehard NBA fan. I'm a fan of the Bucks. I'm a fan of basketball. Basketball was one of my first loves, my first passions. I've got a lot of issues with the style of NBA that the way it's played right now and the mindset of some of these players, and it's taken a hit. Like, I used to be a diehard. I would say I used to be a diehard NBA fan. That was my jam as a youngster in the 90s. That I didn't care who was playing on NBA and NBC. That was appointment viewing for me, or the games on TNT that night. Kevin Harlan or Marv Albert or whoever. I can still picture that was my thing. But the NBA has lost that for me, and a lot of it is because of, well, one, all the player movement, but two, you don't know who's going to play night in and night out. So I think the Cup has done a good job in its infancy. It's only been around for a couple years. That has where the players have bought in. I think that's the main thing, getting the players to buy in, because if the players buy in, fans will buy in. And for the most part, outside of a few, but for the most part, players are into this thing. And now that the Bucks are in the finals here, yeah, I'm like, okay, now I want to win this thing. Maybe at the beginning I was like, yeah, whatever happens. I'm watching, but I usually watch it. Now I want to win this thing. The fact that I want to win this trophy, and I don't care if they raise another banner. I want to win it because that's my competitive nature. I want my team to win it. I don't care how non-prestigious or less prestigious this thing is. All right, let's take a quick break and switch gears, and we're going to talk some Badgers with RJ Cardinal coming up next. Are you hosting family and friends for the holiday season this year? Hey, that can be pretty stressful trying to figure out what to prepare, who likes what to eat, and so on. Well, you can take some of that stress off your plate by simply visiting Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Whether you will be tackling the cooking yourself or you need some help with preparing meals this holiday season, Hy-Vee can help you out in so many different ways. Whether you want to shop and save some money or you need help with some catering, Hy-Vee in Eau Claire has you covered. So stop on in and get started for your holiday preparations today. First things first, RJ, I was trying to say, we're sending our thoughts down to everybody in your neck of the woods in Madison with the tragic events from yesterday and such. I know words can't describe it and such, but I know as me for a parent of a 7-year-old, that's one of my worst thoughts over there. So we're sending our thoughts to everybody down in Madison this morning, bud.
Well, appreciate that. Yeah, it was a tough day around the office. We have a couple of people who have connections to the school, everything safe and sound on their end. But yeah, just a horrible thing that you really hope a child, whether it's yours or just in general, never has to go through. But yeah, it kind of a tough day. So
yeah. I could imagine.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Badger-wise, let's talk some football here, RJ. So yesterday as well, got a couple of commitments, it looks like, from some quarterbacks. So the Badgers obviously looking hard for quarterbacks. We know Tanner Mordecai entered the transfer portal. Brandon Locke entered the transfer portal. His younger brother decommitted from the Badgers. And then yesterday, first up, we heard about Danny O'Neal from San Diego State, and then Billy Edwards Jr., who played for Maryland last year. So a couple quarterbacks who got some starting experience this past year, RJ.
Yeah, well, which is always good. At least you have some experience now. No matter what level it is, you have experience as a starter. One in Big Ten games, the other, Mountain West for San Diego State. Either or, though, looking at the stats, the touchdown to interception ratio still a little high. But hopefully with a new quarterbacks coach here, we'll still have to find out who that's going to be. But new offensive coordinator, a system that actually has a playbook, and a system that relies on the run and doesn't really make the quarterback choose. I mean, that sounds kind of weird to say. Doesn't really make the quarterback focus on an initial route. I know last year there were a couple of times, the Purdue game, where there were 2 interceptions, whether they were Locke's fault or not. I think both of them, one was, one wasn't. But Longo said there were no mistakes in the game from the quarterback. It's hard to say that when you have 2 interceptions, but in talking to some people, when you hit the number 1 target that Longo says you got to go to, that isn't a mistake, no matter what the result is. So, it's a little weird, but I think in a new offense that is balanced, but yet still is a reliable, violent offense. It's not solely quarterback reliant. It'll be an offense that requires everybody to do their part, and you could call that dumbing down. You can call it whatever you want, but hopefully, you now have 4 quarterbacks in that room. Probably add a walk-on or another one somewhere along the line here. And all of them are going to be there in the spring. So we'll have a quarterback competition coming up this spring and leading us into the summer and fall camp.
That's kind of my next question was going to be to you. Do you think it'll be at this point, I know it's really early, but do you think it will be an open competition? I know some people kind of thought about maybe the kid from Maryland might have the edge coming in here, but do you think it should be at least an open competition?
It should absolutely be an open competition. Usually if you have 1 year of eligibility left, you're given some promises. So who really knows? I'm guessing we're going to hear from all of them. Coach said we're here in an open competition. I didn't come here just because I was going to be named the starter. I wanted to be in a competitive room where we have a chance to do great things. Mm-hmm. So we'll hear the company line jabberjaw, but it's hard to look at a guy with 1 year of eligibility left and say, well, he came here because of that. There's probably some things he's going to be doing in terms of promises that were made to him. He canceled the other visits he had, so who really knows what the NIL package they were putting in front of him as well. And I think one of those visits was going to be Michigan, and Michigan wanted him pretty badly. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But it's a little difficult to think a guy with 1 year of eligibility is coming here to be in a quarterback competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some other guys in the transfer portal. A tight end, too, coming. Was it Ball State's coming over here? Tanner, is it Koziel? Koziel over there. But what I was at 4-star ranking as a transfer, at least at this point, we're at this point in time. RJ 24/7 Sports has their transfer portal class rankings, and Wisconsin's 9th on there. Do you know a little bit about Tanner over here? He seems like he's a really big tight end, a big target for whoever's quarterback in this team.
7'2", the number 2 transfer tight end in the portal. He had 93 catches for 800 and some odd yards, and I forget how many touchdowns it was, but his one season last year was almost equal to the 87 catches, 800 and some odd yards, and 6 touchdowns Wisconsin's tight ends had over the last 3 seasons. So you're looking at a reliable target, at least there, and somebody. Well, and this is another thing. I think as we move forward, the tight ends are going to be used more, and we have a deeper room. We have some guys they brought in like Grant Sect. You have Rob. Am I blanking on his name? Kid from Wanakee. Rob. Yeah, okay. Blanking on that one, but and there's some guys there who will be able to.
Rob Booker.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Some guys there who will be able to kind of be a little more involved in an offense that's looking to establish the run and be balanced in terms of keeping defenses guessing rather than being under center or in the shotgun or the jet the whole time. So it'll be interesting to see how this offense starts to take shape in the spring. It looks like something going back to the familiarity, like we were talking last week after the Grimes hire was made. Just returning to familiarity for at least the Wisconsin fan base, something they can relate to rather than something they see that looks different but still could probably be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And just going off of something that looks like Wisconsin rather than being in a spread and trying to figure it out through there.
So they got a couple quarterbacks here. What would you say is maybe the next big position that they got to address in the transfer portal? Because, I've been seeing how many corners have left this team. Is that a big area of concern that they've got to address, or is it somewhere else?
I still think you do need to go out and get some DBs. You had a safety commit yesterday in Matthew Traynor from Richmond. I think continuing to look at the D-line, they brought in 2 inside guys and 2 edge rushers through the transfer portal. One was a freshman All-American at the FCS level in Charles Perkins from UT Martin. Mason Rieger, who was injured last year from Louisville, but his 2023 was very productive. You have Parker Peterson, another inside guy for the D-line, transferring from Tulane. And then Corey Walker from Western Michigan as another edge rusher. So, maybe still need to build a bit more along the D-line. And you got a couple of guys coming in via actual recruiting. So some of those guys might be tossed into the fire right away too, just due to the depth there. But definitely we got to go look at we have to go look at cornerbacks. It's something that you definitely do need here. And I think, is it 6 now who entered the transfer portal?
Mm-hmm.
Either try to get them, but it sounds like a lot of people who are leaving don't like the position coach. So hopefully that's not something that's going to be a hindrance moving forward, even for recruits and transfer portal guys coming in.
Going to the corner spot too, that to me, and maybe I'm over exaggerating on this too, but when I think of corners and I think of where Fickle had success at Cincinnati, you think of Sauce Gardner over there. Green Bay just went up against one that was over there too, Kobe Bryant, who's now a safety with the Seahawks. When you think of that Cincinnati team, they had a good secondary. When I hear these cornerbacks leaving and kind of saying stuff, and it's Luke Fickle, that concerns me a little bit. RJ, does that concern you a little bit, or am I kind of over exaggerating a little bit?
Well, it doesn't sound like it's Luke Fickle. It sounds like, they all say, I completely believe in Coach Fickle and what he's trying to do there. And then they single out Haynes, the position coach. And it's like, okay, well, that's something. And it's almost like to a T minus one guy who goes, oh, we have a great relationship. And he knows how to coach me. I'm more of a laid-back guy, so he knows how to coach me, and maybe it's not for everybody else. And it's like, well, in this day and age, you kind of have to be a coach that kind of molds to people's egos and their psyche. But still, it sounds like not many people, even guys who followed him from Cincinnati as recruits or something like that, followed Fickle from Cincinnati, don't like the cornerbacks coach. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes moving forward. But if that keeps happening and guys, if they transfer, keep saying that, it has to be something you look at and say, you can't be here anymore.
Right.
I don't know what you're doing in that room, but it's not working.
Right.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there moving forward? Because if that does continue, you have to have a new cornerbacks coach. I mean, you just can't keep going with a guy that people are flat out saying he's the reason I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we just kind of have to wait and see here. But it'll be interesting to see, like, really what happens there moving forward. Because he wasn't with him at Cincinnati. So
that's what I was going to just ask, because he's from the Gophers, his last job, wasn't it, before Wisconsin?
Yep, and so Michigan State before that, and I mean he's been at the Big Ten level and D1 level a lot. A couple of stops at some MAC schools: Ohio State, Michigan State, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, starting in 2023. So it's not like there's a loyalty there, or he's been a person there. So it might turn into a situation where, yeah, if that does continue, you'd like to think that players are comfortable enough to go to the head coach and be like, something's not right here, coach.
Mm-hmm.
So if it does continue, you'd have to look at it as being a parting ways with Coach Haynes as things progress forward here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to get to a little bit later on. Before I let you go, you're going to make some picks here. By the way, I can't believe we've already got bowl games going on now. Like, we got one tonight, the Frisco Bowl.
I mean, we had one Saturday.
Yeah, the Salute to Veterans Bowl.
It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reg team going on tonight, and then West Virginia's all excited about Rich Rod coming back over there too. So
yeah, right.
Memphis and West Virginia. So we'll get to a couple of picks because we got some big games coming up here too, and I know we got a good friend of the program, Mark, is big Ohio Bobcats fan, so he's going to be probably paying attention to that one coming up on Friday too. But before that, let's go to some hoops. So the men's basketball team, RJ, dropping out of the rankings, probably shouldn't be that big of a surprise to anybody, but they do bounce back and get a victory against Butler coming up here. It sure feels like it's almost the same song and dance for some of the stuff. Stephen Krall, like, I keep seeing and keep reading people saying, well, if Stephen Krall does this, and that, he could be one of the best big men in the conference and one of the best players in the country. But at some point, it is what it is, isn't it, RJ? That this is the type of player we're going to get from him.
Yeah, if we're still saying if,
yeah.
It's not happening at this point. He's not hitting that Frank Kaminsky development. He's not hitting that, third-year big man development we've seen at Wisconsin. And the weird thing is, most of those big men have attributed, in the lineage under Bo Ryan, have attributed that to Coach Gard when he was an assistant. So maybe it's just not enough to be doing that. And I don't know if that's Krabenhoff with the big guys now. It could be one of those, you're coaching and you were a tenacious defender and a guy who'd go up, be physical, get rebounds and all that, and you just don't know how to coach it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those things. You're coaching and a kid asks a question and you're just like, what? I don't know. You just do it. Like, I can't coach toughness.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, it's something in you. If it's not there, I can't help you out with the why or how do you do it. Like, you do this, who needs to do it? I don't know what it's going to take to get you to get mean,
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have to throw a wrench at him? Do you have to, point out to, like in dodgeball, hey, look, your wife's flirting with some other guy, and then all of a sudden he becomes a whole new person. Like, I don't know what, but like, there was a time in the Butler game where Crowell and Winter both went up for a rebound, and I mean, sure, in the heat of the moment, you don't know who's next to you. You just see some arms, and Winter is just ripping the ball away from Crowell. It's like, well, here, we got a guy who is actually working for it, and you just went up, whether you saw that it was your player, so you just put your hands up and were like, oh, that's yours to go. I mean, yeah, it would have looked silly had they both been fighting for it and, whatever, but, I mean, yeah, Winter was just ripping the ball away and playing through a whistle or however you want to say it. And Yeah, at some point, if you're still saying if, it's not coming to fruition for Stephen Crowell to become the tough guy that we've seen at Wisconsin at the big position in the history here.
Mm-hmm. Moving over to the women's side, they're still 9-2. They've won their last 4 games in a row now. Their latest one was against Butler back on the 11th. They got University of Albany coming up here. Then after that is the Big Ten schedule. Is that when we're going to find out, do you think, RJ, that this women's basketball team might have something here?
Yeah, I mean, they already squeaked one out against Rutgers at home. So, I mean, you're off to a 1-0 start there. But like I said, maybe it just took a while to get the correct players in here. But Big Ten historically has been one of the better women's basketball conferences. So, yeah, we're going to see here shortly after you play Albany what this team has, and seeing if this 9-2 start has built up confidence and built up something that that can instill a new mindset and culture for this program, and hopefully that leads to not another NIT berth, but hopefully you're stacking up some wins here in the Big Ten and being able to have an at-large berth into the NCAA tournament for the first time in a while. I'm trying to remember the last time they were in it, and it doesn't really come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a program that has been more known for their NIT runs than NCAA appearances, and sometimes for a non-money making sport, that's where we get to. But I'd like to think there's something in place here, and at least it looks like they belong on a court, because for a couple of years there, it looked like Wisconsin wasn't even the number 1, 2, or 3 team in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little weird to say because there's only 3. There are 4. I was going to say system schools, but can't forget about Marquette in there.
Mm-hmm.
in terms of women's basketball, D1 basketball programs in the state. So, if you're the 4th in your state, and you should be 1 or 2, ultimately, when you look at it and you think about Marquette and Wisconsin should be 1 and 2, but for the years and years, you had UW Green Bay as the representative who somehow got all the state talent to come up and make them a power in the Horizon League, and one across the nation, where people just assumed they were going to go to the NCAA tournament and make it out of the first weekend and maybe have a little run every now and then. But you'd like to see that shift over to Madison and your flagship university to be able to get something together. And hopefully this 9-2 start, come what is that, Saturday or Friday?
Yeah.
Come Friday, you're going to be 10-3. Hopefully somewhere along the line in the rest of this Big Ten season, you can claw to 10 wins, get a 20-win season, and hopefully, or have a respectable winning record, and give yourself a shot to make the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big step for a program that's trying to reset its identity moving forward.
Before we get to picks, really quick, men's hockey over the weekend, Friday the 13th, shutting out number 8 Michigan 4-0, and then falling in overtime. I mean, this comes a week after, same against Michigan State, the number 1 team in the country, after a slow start to the beginning of the season for this hockey team, for this men's hockey team. You feeling better? Are you feeling more confident after every weekend that you've seen this team out on the ice there, RJ?
Absolutely. And, you had 12 new guys on this roster. And like I said early on, it just looked like they didn't even know what they were doing early on in the season. And it's making more sense as you have the role players who are now falling into their roles. You started out 2-8 on the year. In the last 8 now, you're 5-2-1. So, I mean, they're working something out here, and it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. You definitely you want to make up these 3 games to put yourself in. But I was looking at it, Wisconsin, even though in conference they're 5-7, they a lot of those are overtime losses. So they got points no matter what. They are 3rd place in the Big Ten right now at 5-7 in conference. So they're doing what they need to do. And you take a split from the number 1 and number 8 team in the nation. You stole some points against Minnesota when you played them, and they were number 3 in the nation. You got a loss and an overtime loss, so you picked up a point there. Against Notre Dame when they were ranked, you had an overtime loss and a win. You got 4 points there. So they've been getting points here, even with the losses, which sounds weird to say, but you're getting those points, and you're putting yourself up 3rd place in the conference with a losing record because you're starting to have these battles, and they're looking a lot more competent on the ice, and I think they're finding each other, and they're able to start falling into line with why Hastings brought in, whether they're freshmen or transfers. They're finding their place, and it's starting to look a lot more crisp on the ice.
Mm-hmm. All right, before I let you go, RJ, and this is the last time I'm going to talk to you because we're going to be out next Tuesday. So, couple picks here. We're going to go with the college football playoff picks here. Rapid fire. Okay. Indiana at Notre Dame, Friday.
I mean, I got to go with Indiana.
Mm-hmm. I like it. SMU at Penn State.
Well, judging by the way I've seen Penn State play some games, I kind of like SMU. Mm-hmm. I don't know, what the weather is going to be like on Saturday in Happy Valley, but I think as long as they don't get down early by multiple scores like they did in the ACC championship game, I think SMU has what it takes to pull off that upset in Happy Valley this weekend.
I like it. Clemson at Texas.
Texas. Clemson lucked into being here. Like I said, they got it up to a big lead, and SMU stormed all the way back to lose by 3 on a last-second field goal. So I like Texas beating Clemson.
And then finally, we'll go with Tennessee at Ohio State.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the loss to Michigan has affected this team. I think that could really, be something that lingers. I'm not sure that Tennessee has everything it needs to make a deep run into the college football playoff, and it's weird to say that because it's only 12 teams, so you got one more game, and so it's a 2-game thing to get to the Final Four of the college football playoff. But I think having an off day kind of wakes Ohio State up, and they'll pull off the win over Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. All right, good stuff there. RJ, we appreciate you every single week, buddy. I know we're not going to be able to catch up next week because of Christmas and that, but have yourself a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to your family over there, and a big thanks for hopping on with us this morning, bud.
Absolutely, and if you're back in the office on New Year's Eve, we'll talk then.
Sounds good, buddy. We appreciate it, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, sounds good. We'll talk to you later.
All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. A big thanks to our sponsors, Hy-Vee, Toyson Ford. Don't forget to check out the Resonance Branding Company's Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. Also, don't forget to leave me a voicemail on the Man Cave Bat Line. Got to come up with a better name. I want to incorporate Batman into it. The Bat Line. Let's just call it the Bat Line. Give me a voicemail on the Bat Line, or you can hit me up with a text on the Bat Line as well. And if you got 30 seconds, if you could, give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and a positive review on Apple so others can find it. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you in the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.